Well, hey, y'all. Something new up here. I'm going to have to ask Dan, who is helping us out behind the scenes. I'm sorry. We've been talking here for about 5 minutes or so. So we'll go ahead and re-rack things. Give me just a second here to do that, and we'll get started.
As we move into storm season, here's something most homeowners don't realize after a storm. Roof damage isn't always obvious. Wind can lift shingles, breaking the seal. Hail can bruise them below, and flashing around chimneys and pipes can loosen without you ever knowing. That damage may not show up for months. If your area has strong wind or hail, a professional inspection will help bring you clarity before small damage turns into bigger problems.
Mississippi's trusted weather experts. This is Mississippi Live Weather at 5.
Well, welcome in here, Mississippi Live Weather at 5. I'm Chief Meteorologist Matt Lawpon. We're kind of been watching some showers and thunderstorms to the west of us, trying to build in one of the many things we're going to be looking at here over the course of the next few minutes here from our room-to-room weather center. I'll kind of re-rack here for a moment. For whatever reason, a little bit of an issue there, and I'm trying to make sure. Let me know in the comments here if the audio is okay, because in my ear it is not okay, so I want to double check that here for a moment, just make sure everything's good on that. And again, appreciate y'all for watching us here. Storms become more likely as we head throughout the overnight time period here. Significant changes are on the way as we look toward your forecast for your Friday, especially related to severe weather and the timing of that severe weather. We'll have that here in a couple minutes. And again, our game of the week, we are looking again with our meteorologist Gabe Maynor, and debuting, at least here on Mississippi Live Weather for the first time, our Ethan Foster. They'll have updates here from our game of the week location in a couple minutes. Appreciate everyone for chiming in on that audio. Glad to hear that it's going good. Just must be one of my earpieces as far as that's concerned there. So forecast into tonight, as you can see, expecting those temperatures to not drop a whole lot. Rain coverage to increase up to 50 to 60% coverage, and we do anticipate that a few storms could be strong before we get to early tomorrow morning. We're timing out the latest on that potential and where here in a couple of minutes. Debuting a new camera here, again with our cooperation with the North Mississippi Storm Chasers. This is up in Alcorn County, south part of Alcorn County, kind of near the Hinkle area, south of Kossuth, southwest of Biggersville, kind of west of the Rienzi area is where they're at in Alcorn County. As you can see, 66 the temperature. I want you to compare that where we think the severe weather chances are less and less to where we are, where we think they are increasing. That's down in South Mississippi. A lot warmer there, right? 75 degrees, the temperature there at this time. In both cases, the measure of moisture pretty close, but that moisture will start working its way northward, increasing our chances for storms and the potential for strong storms as we go into the next 24-hour period here. Look at Mississippi Live Weather Radar at this point. We are dry at this time. We are watching our chances for storms likely to increase later on tonight. But what I want to immediately point out here is these storms are struggling out in Arkansas. That is a good thing. Projections have overdone that a little bit, and that makes me more hopeful that we're dealing with a less impressive severe weather chance as far as this is concerned. Hopefully the way that ends up playing out this evening is a sign of what continues as we head into and through the overnight hours. As we look at Futurecast here, again, for the next few hours, not expecting to see a lot that's overly heavy or strong on Mama Justice Doppler radar. As you can see on our HRRR model here, Futurecast has some thunderstorms out there into Arkansas, trying to move into the area, and a few that are a little bit heavier that do get going here 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. We'll talk about what these are capable of here in a couple minutes as we kind of analyze where the most likely to produce severe weather is. But as you can see, we do expect to have rumbles overnight. This will make for a wet morning commute for many, and it's not impossible that a few of those could potentially be on the stronger end of the spectrum. But outside the studio this evening is our meteorologist, Gabe Maynor. He is at our Mississippi Live Game of the Week. And Gabe, how are things looking up there as we now take our venture into basketball here? And we'll talk to you for a moment before we kind of come on back and handle the rest of the forecast real quick. So quick talk.
Yeah, Matt, well, weather is not a concern tonight as Biggersville is taking on Torrance in Biggersville. And, of course, this is for our Mississippi Live Weather Game of the Week. Right now, JV is playing currently in the fourth quarter, and that's for now. That's a knockdown three. Biggersville currently at 18, but Torrance definitely taking this one so far as they have 55. But this is the JV matchup. And we are awaiting that high school, the varsity matchup coming up at 7:30 tonight. So it's going to end with a good one. And of course, teams trying to come out of the tunnel too. So they're excited about getting the game going, and of course for our game of the week as well. So we appreciate you guys nominating Biggersville, and we're excited to see these highlights coming up later on tonight. Look for us touch back at 6 o'clock with the latest on this matchup, the final that comes out of this, and how this shapes up the Alcorn County tournament moving into the next couple of days. But Matt, I know you're tracking an active forecast over the next couple of days. Let's go ahead and take it back to the Room to Room Weather Center. But for now, live in Biggersville, meteorologist Gabe Maynard with Mississippi Live Weather.
And again, I appreciate the good folks there, Langston and Lott, for supporting us here on Mississippi Live Weather and supporting our Game of the Week coverage. Hopefully, voting still ongoing there for Spirit Squad, as well as the band/student section of the week. Keep on checking those out. You can find that on my Facebook page there. Pretty competitive vote going on at this point here. As you can see this evening, though, we have those storms by early tomorrow, and then a little bit of a break through the middle portion of the day before storms come back in a big way later on tomorrow night. But we're hopeful that the fact that we have two chances and separated, that perhaps things are not going to line up as far as severe weather is concerned. Coming up here in 60 seconds, we're going to break down how all those different components kind of relate to this here. We're going to look in more detail at, in particular, the amount of fuel for thunderstorms and how much that is available.
Out with the old and in with the new. It's time to save big at Room to Room's New Year's sale. Store-wide markdowns 50 to 70% off, no tax, 48-month special financing. It's a new year at Room to Room Furniture in Tupelo. There's no place like home.
When choosing a dentist for our family, Tupelo Smiles was the answer for us. They greet us with warm smiles right when we walk in the door, and they make us feel so welcome. We love Tupelo Smiles.
Right now, from the Room to Room Weather Center, here's Mississippi's Chief Meteorologist, Matt Lobhon.
Again, here from the Room to Room Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Matt Lopon. Again, your Friday severe weather risk has been trimmed to the south. This is something we discussed in a pretty lengthy overall discussion here a couple of minutes ago. Earlier this afternoon, fairly long Facebook forecast discussion there. But at this point here, certainly looking like locations to the south are most likely to see all of the various impacts that we will see. And so that is one thing that we have adjusted here as we look at the severe weather threats. Again, confidence on tornadoes thankfully has come down a little bit more. I'm always very excited. We talk about storms and we talk about the chances increasing. But I am always most excited when we can go from, say, a yellow back to a green, which is where we're at. Now, this doesn't mean no tornado threat. It just means low tornado threat as far as tonight and tomorrow is concerned. I think it's likely most of us will not see tornadoes, and I guess that's pretty much any severe weather event, but the confidence in tornadoes remains low. Damaging winds a possibility, hail not particularly likely, and flash flooding also a possibility with this. Let's talk about those peak wind gusts, one of those things you'll see only here on Mississippi Live Weather, and over the course of the next 24 hours, when you look at the peak wind gust time, you'll notice that some of those peak wind gusts wait until early Saturday morning before they're more likely in some spots here. We look out here toward the Delta, toward Chula, back there toward Winona. That's different, right? It's different because initially most of our projections had storms along a prefrontal trough. They get going, very well organized. But last night at 10 o'clock, we talked about a wall that was being built of showers kind of blocking off the moisture coming from the Gulf of Mexico. And I think that's one of the things that's kind of splitting that timing. We'll look at that with Futurecast in much more detail in a second. But I know folks, I had some folks in Facebook chat earlier saying, okay, do I need to keep kids home from school tomorrow? And the answer is absolutely not. But you need to know that it's going to be wet for the morning commute, really wet. And that means that we're going to probably have to start a little earlier and you want to make sure you're up early with us. I'll be tracking things for our meteorologist, Maggie Jo McCauley. She's off tomorrow, just a pre-scheduled thing month in advance. And so I'm going to be tracking things. We expect to have a lot of rainfall around early, somewhat of a break around midday, probably in the afternoon, fairly dry, and then tomorrow evening, tomorrow night, that chance as well. Again, appreciate IMPC for sponsoring our school day and school bus forecasts here on Mississippi Live Weather. Okay, so as we progress through the next 12 hours or so, let's watch this. Again, storm system coming in from the west. Gulf of Mexico opened up. I want you to see when things first go red, and then we'll zoom in on the spots, right? So you can see just kind of yellows and greens largely out there on kind of this wider shot, but a little more red starting to show up back there toward the Mississippi River by around 11 o'clock, and then midnight they get more organized 1 to 2 o'clock. What we're thinking, again, we have some thunderstorms down here toward Jackson, a little heavier, up close to, say, Ackerman, stretching back to Calhoun City. This line here, again, kind of a little prefrontal wave, and it is what will block off the maximum moisture return. What wave is causing that? And so that will continue to be a location where we see some isolated storms, a little heavier 4 o'clock in the morning, but you can see heaviest down here Philadelphia, closer to Crystal Springs, versus up here farther north, say Aberdeen, toward around Fulton and Russellville. Again, these will be loud. There will be lightning and thunder to go with them. And it's obviously going to be wet, but most should be non-severe and will not produce tornadoes. Here's why. Let's look at something here a little different than what we typically show. We're going to look at futurecast fuel. What I've done is I've layered on the rainfall, the precipitation on top of that here. So we're going to go all the way so you can see 2 o'clock in the morning on. I want you to show a disparity between two things here, two different spots, right? Here's where we have maximum fuel, right at the Mississippi River, right? Here is where we have the storms. These little outlines here, these lines, these are where the storms are, like one of the heavier ones there near Eupora. There is not an overlap between those two things, because when I'm looking at fuel, what I'm looking at is surface-based fuel, meaning for air to start at the surface and then be transmitted aloft, and the lifting mechanism starting at the surface, right? Well, that's not what's happening. We have a wave, kind of a mid-level wave, that's what's working to trigger these storms as opposed to them being surface-based. So the point is this. These are not going to be tornado-producing thunderstorms. You can see this entire line up here in the northern part of the state displaced. There's surface-based fuel down here. That's why there is a slightly greater chance to see tornado, in my mind, overnight, a little farther south. But from our locations, even though we're trying to bring that moisture in from the Gulf of Mexico, I think things could line up the correct way. So yes, will this be loud in Eupora at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning? Absolutely. And as necessary, we'll bring you coverage here. We'll be monitoring things on Mississippi Live Weather. By 4 o'clock in the morning, our typical new broadcast starts at 6:30 a.m. I'm covering the mornings. If something happens, I'll be on a little earlier. Ignore the fact I probably will not be in a full suit at that point in time, especially I'm just monitoring it, because ultimately I expect these storms to be non-tornado producing, and so I'm just going to, be getting ready for the day, essentially. But see how these are all ahead of the main batch of fuel? That's a sign that these are not going to be surface-based and not going to be tornado-producing thunderstorms. Yeah, they're going to be loud, but there's a displacement between those two. So again, the headline is this. These will be what we call elevated storms, meaning they form above the boundary layer, meaning they're not tornado producing. Hopefully we're crystal clear on that one, on the early part of tomorrow morning. Disruptive, yes. So severe weather risk, here's where we have it. Again, limited risk. And while this says Thursday, while it says today, this goes till basically dawn tomorrow morning. Hence what I just showed you a moment ago there. And in particular, when we look at the tornado risk, you can see that's primarily still back to the west, thinking that the only way that probably happens is if there ends up, for whatever reason, being just enough fuel late this evening. Again, high impact if something like that happens, but very low confidence that that's the way this plays out. So low temperatures, somewhere in the neighborhood of the mid-60s, about 63 in Tupelo, 65 degrees in Greenwood, 63 there in Grenada. Again, normal this time of year is 34, so way above normal. And I'm going to take a moment here to once again say this. Overnight storms are scary. I absolutely get it. But make sure you have weather call, and then there's nothing to worry about, right? It'll call you if something bad's happening. The Mississippi Live Weather app works as well, but weather call, I think, in my personal opinion, is best. And I do mention the Mississippi Live Weather app. We do show this quite often. Again, build your armor. Weather call is one leg of that. But you want to make sure you have Mississippi Live Weather app, Code Red, NWS Weather Radio, all different ways. There are a number of other apps out there that are great, but you want everything to go off at once to wake you up and say something has gone wrong and Matt was wrong and here we are with tornadoes, right? So these are ways, again, I certainly recommend our apps. They are fast, they are accurate, but like anything, do not disturb can knock them out. So hopefully that's not the way of this, and hopefully there's no issues with that. So again, now as we look at the potential there, again, for more active weather, the tornado risk, as we talked about a little bit ago, really southern portion of the area. I'm going to go and clear this back off here, bring it back to kind of our standard shot here for a moment. As we do that again, we are, again, mostly too far north to have major significant impacts as far as tornadoes are concerned related to this on Friday, and here's why. As you see Futurecast, lots of showers and thunderstorms out there to begin the day, and the positioning may be a little bit different than what we were looking at a moment ago there. We're switching between different projections based on the most accurate that we have at this point, but this is all just rainfall and non-severe weather stuff for the most part. Again, not impossible to have a couple strong wind gusts, a rogue hailstone, but these are mostly below severe limits, unless something changes. We'll be monitoring things just in case. Certainly I'll be on at 10 o'clock tonight with updates on that potential there. And as we go through midday, the majority of the activity is down south. Is that different than last night? Yes. This blocking off a decent amount of the fuel for thunderstorms. So we go through kind of a lull. But let's watch back to the west, because this remains kind of the next bogey that we have to pay attention to. Whatever's going on back here in Texas, there's a little wave back here moving through the jet stream. As we talked about, what we call subtropical jet has little waves coming through it, and one of those is going to kick on through, and that's what helps to kind of re-energize the atmosphere and bring some more thunderstorms as we go toward your Friday afternoon. As you can see down here toward Alexandria, Louisiana, where our folks at Cenlaw Weather are watching things, that's a pretty decent chance to have a couple storms that could be strong to severe down there, moving closer to us by that point in time as well. Eventually, could they get up here? Not an impossibility. So as far as highs go tomorrow, somewhere in the low 70s. If we're able to see more sunshine, a little more moisture return, our chances for severe weather increase. But as you can see, just looking at the model there, pretty strong reduction in the overall coverage of storms. We'll have updates at 10, but that's a positive thing. Now, as we go into the evening, storm coverage is expected to increase once again. And again, we're looking back toward Louisiana. That's where these storms are. And they're on a path there that takes them more east than north, right? More Jackson, more Canton, maybe Kosciuszko, maybe Louisville, maybe Starkville. But the thing to keep in mind is that this warm front we have up here, wherever this lands, very close to that, there'll be a severe weather risk. We expect it. Again, I think it might be plotted on here a little too far north. I could argue a little farther south than what this indicates. But in all likelihood, this kind of lines up in a way where we're going to probably still have some stronger thunderstorms south of the Golden Triangle. But I don't think you have to be a meteorologist to say that looks a lot better than what we looked at last night here. And then while we continue to have a lot of showers and thunderstorms around in the overnight hours leading the early morning on Saturday, some of the strongest winds we get out of this whole thing could be as this front moves in and even without thunderstorms, because we do sometimes get what we call pressure gradient winds. And essentially, that's just the cooler and drier air kind of sweeping back and around the back side of this into the area. And as that happens, because there's a lot of big pressure change with that low pressure center up there, then sometimes we end up getting very windy conditions. So it's possible, with all this talk about storms, that the worst of it is just the regular winds being sucked into this storm system. Hopefully that is the case. Again, to kind of verify a lot of what we talked about there, look at that fuel Futurecast kind of overlay, something you'll see only here on Mississippi Live Weather. Again, the majority of the fuel down here at the coast, a very limited amount up in the north part of Mississippi. I'm in particular looking at Friday night here because, again, during the day there's just not a lot of activity that's significant, but I think it's very clear cut. Your eye is drawn down here closer to the coast. As we've talked about all week long, this front that came through earlier in the week that limited how far north moisture returned, that to a certain extent, a saving grace on keeping the most accurate stuff down to the south. Hey, Dylan was asking on Facebook, is that fire? It is meant to kind of look like fire because when you think of a hot burning fire, you think of, fuel, like it's clearly burning something. And in this case, where it's burning up a lot of instability, yeah, it does kind of look like fire. That's an intentional thing there to show you where things are most significant. So again, to review, confidence is low in tornadoes. A brief spin up is possible on our peak impacts there. Some strong wind gusts, but again, confidence is not super high there. I kept it medium because of those pressure gradient winds on the backside. Again, sporadic wind damage possibility even out of a non-severe thunderstorm. Limited hail threat, and again, flash flooding not an impossibility out of this. As we check out those low temperatures Saturday morning, they are dropping. We're going low 50s to 60s again, where the front moves through latest. Those temperatures the warmest and very warm for this time of year, 20 degrees above our normal. Going into your Saturday here as we watch this front kind of moving to the east and moving out of here, some lighter showers kind of on the backside, and then it's just cooler air spreading in and then clearing us on out into Saturday. So really, we have those chances on Friday, really that start late tonight and obviously extend through your day on Friday as well. High temperatures into the upper 60s and in the 50s. This should tell you something here. If we were only 50s, low 50s for lows, and it shows then high temperatures, mid 50s, that's a lot cooler air. It's going to stunt the warm up in most locations and keep us a bit cooler than we've been the last couple days as we go into this upcoming weekend forecast. So here's a look at your Mississippi Live weather, 7-day forecast here. We're at 70% on that rain coverage on your Friday. Again, thunderstorms possible early in the morning, some rumbles. I'll be watching things starting 6:37, 7:30 a.m. and earlier if necessary. And then as we go into your Saturday, rain coverage around 30% there, 63 that temperature, and then we're 45 Sunday, 48 as we look toward Monday. So much cooler as we go into the forecast through next week. Again, a reminder, our next live broadcast will be coming up here at 6 p.m. from the Room to Room Weather Center. We're going to look at a few things. We're going to look at that exclusive strike model and where it's placing, again, some of the storm chances, but in particular, the triple threat, which analyzes the wind damage as well as the impacts for rotation and hail, all in one graphic, hopefully pretty easy to understand. We'll have that coming up at 6 o'clock where it's placing our peak threats as we break down your complete forecast. Appreciate y'all for supporting us here on Mississippi Live Weather. We'll see you at 6.
Even though Gabe grew up in Alabama, Mississippi has now become his home and his family. And one thing about Gabe is he keeps his family safe.
At First Choice Bank, we know you can't always make it before the bank closes. With our integrated teller, you can talk to a live person as late as 7 p.m. on weekdays and noon on Saturdays. It's not just an ATM, it's an ITM. First Choice Bank, your choice for banking.